Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. The math final had felt like wrestling a bear for 3 hours. My brain was fried, my hand was cramped, and the only thing I wanted was to collapse onto my lumpy dorm mattress and forget that numbers even existed. I was halfway through a celebratory, lukewarm soda when my phone buzzed, rattling against the scarred wood of my desk. The screen lit up with a name that made my heart do a painful little stutter step asterisk. Katie asterisk. Katie. She was the kind of girl movies are made about. The kind of girl who makes the world seem a little brighter just by walking into a room. All sunshine hair and a laugh that could disarm armies. She was in my chemistry class, and for the entire semester. My contribution to our acquaintance had been a series of mumbled highs, and one time I awkwardly held a door open for her a second too long. So when I saw her name, my first thought was that it was a mistake, a butt dial. My thumb hovered over the green icon, my mind racing asterisk. Answer it, you idiot! Don't answer! What if you say something stupid? What if you don't say anything at all? Asterisk. I answered. Hello, I managed, my voice coming out a little croaky. Jacob, hey, it's Katie. Her voice was like honeyed sunlight, exactly as I'd imagined. You're done with finals, right? Yeah, just finished math. Lucky. I've still got chem tomorrow. And I am asterisk, so asterisk screwed. She let out a dramatic sigh. Listen, this is super last minute. But are you busy? I was wondering if you could come over to my dorm. I really need some help studying. You're like a genius in that class. My brain short-circuited. Katie wanted asterisk me asterisk to come to asterisk her asterisk room to study. This was not a scenario my overactive imagination had ever dared to conjure. Yeah, sure, I can do that, I stammered, trying to sound casual and not like a man who had just been offered a winning lottery ticket. Awesome, you're a lifesaver. I'm in Prescott Hall, room 304. Come over whenever you're ready. She hung up, and I was left staring at my phone, the silence of my room suddenly deafening. I looked around at the posters of obscure bands and the pile of laundry I'd been meaning to do for a week. I sniffed my armpit. Definitely needed a shower. 20 minutes later, freshly showered and wearing my good hoodie, I was standing outside her door. My hand was shaking as I knocked. The door swung open, and there she was. She was even prettier up close, wearing a simple gray tank top and a pair of soft-looking shorts that showed off her long, toned legs. Her blonde hair was tied up in a messy bun, and she smelled faintly of vanilla and something floral. Hey, come on in, she said, stepping aside. Her room was the polar opposite of mine. It was neat, cozy, with fairy lights strung around the window and framed photos of friends and family on her desk. A large, fluffy pink rug covered most of the floor. It felt like stepping into a different world. Thanks for coming, she said, closing the door behind me. Seriously, I'm desperate. I sat awkwardly on the edge of her desk chair while she perched on her perfectly made bed. No problem. So, what are you stuck on molar concentrations titration curves? She bit her lip and gave me a look that was a confusing mix of guilt and mischief. Okay, so I might have fibbed a little. My stomach dropped, fibbed. I don't just need a little help, she confessed, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Jacob, I know literally nothing. I haven't opened the textbook all semester. I'm going to fail. Like, epically fail. I stared at her, dumbfounded. But why did you ask me to come over? Then I can't teach you an entire semester of chemistry in one night. I know, she said, her blue eyes locking onto mine. She leaned forward, a conspiratorial glint in her expression. That's why I have another way, a better way. She reached over and picked up her phone from the nightstand. It was a sleek, modern device, but the case had a strange, intricate pattern on it that seemed to shimmer under the dorm room lights. I have a plan, she said, her voice full of a sudden, unnerving confidence. You're going to take the test for me. I let out a nervous laugh. What, you want me to wear a blonde wig and a dress I don't think I can pull off being you, Katie? Her smile widened, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh, it's much more effective than that. She tapped her phone screen, and a bizarre app opened. It wasn't like anything I'd ever seen, just a swirling vortex of purple and blue light with 2 empty circles in the middle. What is that, I asked, a knot of unease tightening in my gut. This, she said, her voice barely audible, is how you're going to become a perfect copy of me. She looked up, her expression pleading. I know it sounds insane, but it works. I've used it before for small things. Changing my hair color for a party, making my eyes green just for fun. But it can do more. A lot more. I stood up, shaking my head. This was too weird. Katie, I think I should go. You're obviously really stressed out. No, wait, she scrambled off the bed, grabbing my arm. Her touch was electric. Please, Jacob, I'm on academic probation. If I fail this class, I'm out. My parents will kill me. This is my only shot. Her desperation was palpable, but the idea was ludicrous. Change bodies, that's impossible. It's science fiction. Is it? She challenged, holding up the phone. We live in a world with self-driving cars and phones that can talk to us. Is this really so much crazier? She took a deep breath, her grip on my arm tightening. She stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Her voice dropped to a seductive whisper. Please, Jacob, just this once, help me, and if you do… She leaned in, her lips almost brushing my ear. If you do this for me, tonight, after the exam, I'll let you do anything you want, anything at all. My mind went blank. The promise, whispered in that intoxicating voice, hung in the air between us. It was a crazy, reckless, impossible idea. It went against every law of physics and common sense. But looking into her wide, pleading eyes, feeling the warmth of her hand on my arm, and hearing that promise echo in my head, I found myself ignoring every single alarm bell screaming in my brain. Okay, I heard myself say, the word feeling foreign and insane on my tongue. Okay, I'll do it. The moment the word okay left my lips, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Katie's desperate plea was replaced by a giddy, triumphant energy. A huge smile broke across her face, lighting up her features. Oh my God, thank you, Jacob. You won't regret this, I promise, she exclaimed, practically bouncing on her toes. She grabbed my other hand, pulling me toward the center of the room. Okay, let's do this before I lose my nerve. She held up her phone, the swirling vortex on the screen seeming to pulse with a faint inner light. With her thumb, she dragged a little camera icon over one of the empty circles on the app. The phone's camera activated. Stand still, she instructed, her voice a mix of excitement and concentration. She aimed the camera at me, and a green grid overlaid my body on the screen. A soft chime sounded. Then, she turned the phone around, switched to the selfie camera, and did the same for herself. Now, the two circles in the app were filled with our live images. A thin, glowing line connected them. Ready? She asked, her eyes wide. I wasn't even close to ready. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But I just nodded, my throat too dry to speak. She pressed a large button in the center of the screen that looked like two arrows chasing each other in a circle. For a second, nothing happened. I felt a surge of relief. It was a joke, a prank app. I was an idiot for falling for it. Then, the heat started. It began in my toes, a low prickling warmth that felt like stepping into a hot bath. But the sensation didn't stop. It crept up my legs, intense and invasive, sinking past my skin and into my very bones. I gasped, stumbling back a step. It felt like my entire body was being filled with warm, liquid light. What's happening? I choked out, looking down at my hands. They were glowing with a faint golden aura. Just relax, Katie said, though her own voice trembled. She was glowing too, a mirror image of what was happening to me. It feels weird, but it doesn't hurt. She was wrong. It didn't hurt in the traditional sense, but the feeling was so profoundly alien that it was terrifying. I felt my skeleton begin to shift. It wasn't a violent cracking, but a soft, surreal plasticity, like my bones had turned to warm clay. I felt my shoulders narrow, the broad frame I'd always had seeming to melt and contract inward. My hips, in stark contrast, began to push outward with a gentle, insistent pressure. The sensation was dizzying, like my body's entire blueprint was being rewritten in real time. I cried out as a sharp, tingling sensation shot through my chest. It felt like 1,000 tiny needles prickling me from the inside. I looked down in horror and saw two small mounds beginning to swell beneath my hoodie. Pushing the fabric taut, they grew with an unnerving speed, becoming heavier, fuller, until they settled into a soft, undeniable weight against my ribcage. I instinctively brought a hand up to touch the area, and my fingers met a soft, sensitive flesh that was most definitely not my own. My skin was next, the familiar roughness, the odd scar on my forearm, the calluses on my palms, they all dissolved. A wave of shimmering energy washed over me, leaving my skin feeling impossibly soft and smooth. The light dusting of hair on my arms and legs vanished as if it had never been there. I could smell the air changing around me. My own scent of soap and faint sweat was being replaced by that delicate, vanilla floral aroma that was uniquely Katie's. My center of gravity was shifting, tilting forward with the new weight on my chest and the wider set of my hips. I felt my height decrease by a few inches, the world suddenly seeming a little taller. My neck felt more slender, my Adam's apple dissolving into a smooth, graceful column. The most disorienting change was happening to my head. I felt a pulling sensation at my scalp, and my short brown hair began to lengthen at an impossible rate. It cascaded down my shrinking back, tickling my new, narrower shoulders, spilling over my chest like a waterfall of silk. The color bled out of it, replaced by a radiant, sun-streaked blonde. I tried to shout, but the sound that came out was all wrong. It was a high, breathy gasp, a girl's voice, asterisk, her asterisk voice. The glow faded, and the intense physical sensation subsided, leaving a phantom tingle all over my new body. My legs felt unsteady, like I was on stilts. I swayed, and a pair of large, strong hands grabbed my arms to steady me. I looked up, and my own face stared back at me. My brown hair, my square jaw, my height. But the eyes were Katie's, wide with shock and utter fascination. He was looking down at me from what used to be my body. "Whoa," my old voice said, but it was filled with her feminine inflection. "This feels solid." She Jacob now. I guess flex my bicep. A look of wonder on her face. I couldn't speak. I stumbled away from her, toward the full-length mirror hanging on the back of Katie's closet door. The person staring back at me was not Jacob. It was Katie, a perfect, flawless replica. The same heart-shaped face, the same startlingly blue eyes, the same button nose, the long blonde hair tumbled around my shoulders. I was wearing my own baggy hoodie and jeans, but they hung off this new, petite frame in a way that looked utterly ridiculous. I lifted a hand to my face. The girl in the mirror did the same. My fingers were long and slender, the nails neatly shaped. I touched my cheek, feeling the impossible softness of the skin. I opened my mouth, and the girl in the mirror copied the motion. This couldn't be real. It was a dream, a hallucination brought on by post-exam stress. I took a shaky step, my new hips swaying with a motion that felt both foreign and strangely natural. I tentatively prodded one of the soft mounds on my chest through the thick fabric of my hoodie. The sensation was bizarre, a dull, sensitive pressure that shot a confusing jolt through my system. It's perfect," Katie's voice said from my old body. She was walking around the room, getting used to the longer stride, the heavier footsteps. She ran a hand through my short hair. "It's so weird not having hair in my face all the time, and I feel so tall." "Perfect," I squeaked, my new voice cracking with panic. "Katie, this is insane. Change me back right now." She walked over to me, a playful smirk on my old face. It was profoundly disturbing to see my own features twisted into an expression I'd never made. "Relax," she said, her new, deeper voice rumbling in a way that was both familiar and alien. "We have a deal. Remember, you take the test for me, and asterisk, then asterisk, we switch back. It's only for a few hours." Only for a few hours, in this body, as a girl, as asterisk, her asterisk. The reality of the situation crashed down on me. I wasn't just going to wear a wig. I was going to walk into a crowded exam hall in this body. With these hips, this hair, this chest, everyone would see me as Katie. My legs felt weak, and I leaned against the wall for support, my head spinning. The girl in the mirror looked pale and terrified. Katie, or rather, the new Jacob, seemed to notice my distress. Her playful demeanor softened slightly. "Hey, it's going to be okay, but we can't have you going to the exam in that," she said, gesturing to my ridiculously oversized clothes. "That's your first lesson in being me. You have to look the part." She turned and opened her closet, and my heart sank even further. It was a sea of bright colors, soft fabrics, and clothes that looked far too small and delicate to be real. "Don't worry," she said, pulling a few items off their hangers. "I'll help you get dressed." My panic was quickly being overshadowed by a new, more immediate kind of dread. Katie, the boy who is now me, tossed a small pile of fabric onto the bed. It was a collection of items so alien to my experience that they might as well have been from another planet. "Okay, first things first," she said, picking up a delicate scrap of pink lace and silk. "You need to get out of those boy clothes, starting with your underwear." I just stared at the flimsy-looking panties and matching bra. The idea of taking off my own boxers and putting those asterisk on was mortifying. My cheeks burned with a heat that had nothing to do with the transformation. I can't," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. She sighed, running a hand through her short brown hair. It was an impatiently masculine gesture that looked utterly bizarre coming from her. "Look, Jacob, or Katie, whatever. We don't have time for a freak-out. The exam is in an hour. This body is yours for now, and you have to dress it properly. Nobody will believe you're Katie if you show up in a hoodie that looks like a circus tent on you." She had a point, a terrifying, horrible point, with trembling fingers. I pulled the hoodie over my head. The long blonde hair got caught, and I fumbled with it. My movements clumsy. The cool air of the room hit my bare arms and shoulders, and the sensation of it on my new sensitive skin made me shiver. The gray tank top I was now wearing underneath felt soft and thin. It clung to my new curves in a way that made me acutely aware of every contour. "Good, now the rest," she commanded, turning her back to give me a semblance of privacy. My fingers felt like clumsy sausages as I undid my jeans and let them drop to the floor. I was left standing in my old, worn-out boxer shorts and the gray tank top. The sight in the mirror was so jarring, so completely absurd, a girl's body from the neck down, but dressed in the last vestiges of my male identity, that a hysterical laugh almost bubbled up. I took a deep breath and picked up the lace panties. They were incredibly light, like holding a spider web. The fabric was silky and cool against my fingertips. Awkwardly, I stepped out of my boxers and pulled them on. The sensation was strange. The soft, slick material felt like nothing, yet it was a constant, intimate reminder of the changes my body had undergone. The bra was a far greater challenge. It was a push-up model, with underwire and light padding. I stared at the series of tiny hooks and eyes on the back, completely baffled. After a minute of fumbling behind my back, my arms contorting into unnatural angles, Katie let out an exasperated sound. "Oh, for crying out loud. You clasp it in the front and then spin it around. Haven't you ever seen a movie?" She demonstrated the motion on herself without turning around. Feeling my face flush an even deeper shade of crimson, I did as she said. I fastened the hooks at my stomach, the mechanism clicking into place, and then awkwardly rotated the bra around my torso. I slid my arms through the straps and then leaned forward, adjusting myself into the cups as I vaguely remembered seeing in some TV commercial. The underwire pressed firmly against my ribs, and the straps dug slightly into my shoulders. The garment felt constricting, artificial, lifting and presenting a part of my body I was still trying to forget I had. "Okay, what's next?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The outfit," she said, turning back around. She held up a crisp, white button-up blouse. It was made of a thin, slightly sheer material. "This first." I put it on, my fingers struggling with the small, pearl-like buttons. They were on the wrong side, a fact I'd never considered until this moment. The fabric was light and airy, and through it, I could just make out the pink lace of the bra. The thought of anyone else seeing that made my stomach clench. Next, she handed me the skirt. It was a black, pleated mini skirt, the kind I'd seen girls wear all over campus. It looked impossibly short. I stepped into it and pulled it up. The waistband settled snugly around my new, narrow waist, and the zipper closed with a soft zip asterisk. The hem ended a good 6 inches above my knee, exposing a shocking amount of my long, pale legs. I had never felt so exposed. "It's so short," I breathed, tugging at the hem uselessly. "It's supposed to be short," she said matter-of-factly. "Now for the most important part." She held up a small, rectangular cardboard package. On the front was a picture of a woman with impossibly long, glossy legs. The package read *sheer black pantyhose*. "You can't be serious," I said. "Completely. A look isn't complete without the right legwear. It pulls everything together. Now, be careful. These are delicate. You have to bunch them up and pull them on slowly. Otherwise, you'll get a run in them before you even leave the room." She tore open the package and handed me the contents. They felt like a whisper of black smoke in my hands. Cool and impossibly smooth. Following her instructions, I sat on the edge of the bed and gathered one leg of the pantyhose into a little donut of fabric. I pointed my toe and carefully slid it over my foot. The nylon stretched over my skin, hugging every curve of my ankle and calf. The sensation was incredible, a slick, compressive feeling that made my legs look sleek and toned. The sheer black color gave my skin a flawless, polished look. I slowly, carefully, pulled them all the way up my thighs, the fabric gliding over my smooth skin. Finally, I stood and settled the waistband over the top of my panties, just below my navel. I looked down. My legs didn't look like mine anymore. They were long, slender, and elegant, encased in a shimmering black sheath. A gust of air from the window vent blew across the room, and I could feel the cool draft directly through the thin nylon, a sensation that was both unnerving and strangely pleasant. "See better," right, Katie said, nodding in approval. I couldn't answer. I was too busy staring at the stranger in the mirror. The white shirt, the short black skirt, the long, dark-sheathed legs. It was a complete transformation. I looked like a student, yes, but a very different kind of student. "One last thing," she said, and pulled a pair of shoes from under her bed. They were black pumps with a thin, sharp heel that had to be at least 3 inches high. My eyes went wide. "No, absolutely not. I'll break my ankle." "You'll be fine. They make your legs look amazing. The trick is to walk heel to toe and put your weight on the balls of your feet." Reluctantly, I slipped my feet into the shoes. They pinched my toes and forced my feet into an unnatural arch. I stood up, wobbling precariously. My entire body felt off balance. I took a tentative step and immediately lurched to the side, my arms flailing. Katie shot forward and caught me, her strong hands gripping my newly delicate arms. For a moment, we were face to face, her in my body, me in hers. My old familiar face was inches from my new one. I could see the faint stubble on my chin, the mole next to my eye. Her blue eyes, however, stared out from my face, full of an amused, almost flirtatious light. "See," she murmured, her new voice a low rumble. "You just need a little support." Her proximity sent a confusing jolt through me. I was embarrassed, terrified, and yet there was another feeling, a tiny spark of something I couldn't name. I quickly pulled away, my balance a little more stable this time. She looked me up and down one last time, a satisfied smile on my old face. "Perfect, you look exactly like me." She tossed the blonde hair over my shoulder. "Now, remember, you're Katie. Walk like her, act like her, and for God's sake, don't trip." She handed me a cute little backpack and my old student ID, which now bore her face. I took a final terrified glance in the mirror. A pretty blonde girl in a short skirt and high heels stared back. She looked ready for an exam. I, on the other hand, felt like I was walking to my own execution. Stepping out of the dorm room was like stepping onto a stage without having read the script. The hallway floor, a worn-out linoleum I'd never given a second thought, was now a treacherous landscape. The sharp asterisk, click-clack asterisk of my heels echoed in the quiet corridor, each step a declaration of my fraudulent presence. I walked slowly, my arms held out slightly for balance, my hips swaying with an unpracticed, jerky motion. I was intensely aware of how my body moved, of the way the pleated skirt swished around my thighs with every step. The elevator ride down was a silent torture. A guy from my English class got on at the second floor. He glanced at me, did a double take, and then gave a slow, appreciative smile. "Hey, Katie, looking good," he said, his eyes lingering for a moment on my legs before flicking back up to my face. My brain froze. I was supposed to respond. Katie would respond. She'd probably smile and say something witty. I, however, could only manage a tight, panicked nod. My voice had completely deserted me. He shrugged and turned back to face the doors, leaving me with a pounding heart and a fresh wave of nausea. He thought I was her. It was working. The disguise was perfect. And that was the most terrifying part. The walk across campus was a gauntlet of new sensations and unwanted attention. The gentle afternoon breeze, which I normally would have found refreshing, felt invasive. It slipped under the hem of my skirt, chilling my skin through the thin layer of pantyhose. I had to press my hand against the fabric to keep it from flying up, a gesture I'd seen girls do a million times but never understood the panicked necessity of until now. But the worst part was the eyes. As a reasonably average-looking guy, I was used to a certain level of invisibility. People didn't really look at me unless they knew me. But as Katie, I was a magnet for gazes. I could feel them from across the quad lingering, assessing, curious. A group of guys sitting on a bench stopped their conversation to watch me walk by. One of them let out a low whistle. A part of me, the old Jacob, cringed in profound shame and humiliation. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the pavement, but another, smaller, and much more confusing part of me felt something else. A flicker of nervous excitement, a strange thrill at being the center of attention. It was a guilty, unwelcome feeling, but it was there, a tiny spark in the overwhelming darkness of my anxiety. I found myself instinctively straightening my posture, pulling my shoulders back, making my walk a little less wobbly. I was performing, and to my horror, a part of me didn't hate it. When I finally reached the lecture hall where the exam was being held, my nerves were completely shot. I found a seat near the back, sinking into the hard plastic chair with a sigh of relief. The simple act of sitting down was a welcome respite from the tyranny of the high heels. I carefully crossed my legs, the smooth nylon sliding against itself. The movement felt surprisingly elegant, natural even. I glanced down and saw a long, shapely leg, clad in sheer black, resting over the other. For a split second, I forgot it was attached to me. The professor began handing out the exam booklets. As he passed my desk, he gave me a small, encouraging smile. "Good luck, Katie." I just nodded, my mouth too dry to form words. The exam itself was the only familiar thing in this surreal nightmare. It was chemistry, my best subject. The questions were straightforward balancing equations, calculating yields, identifying organic compounds. My brain, blessedly, was still my own. I uncapped the pen with my slender fingers and began to write. The answers flowed easily. I moved through the test with a confidence and speed that seemed to be drawing attention. I could feel the eyes of the guy sitting next to me. I risked a quick glance. He was staring, not at my paper, but at me. A dumbstruck look on his face. I quickly looked away, my cheeks flushing. It was probably strange for them to see Katie, the girl who presumably knew nothing, blazing through the final exam like a certified genius. As I worked, my inner turmoil raged. On the one hand, I was Jacob, a science nerd acing a test. On the other, I was inhabiting the body of the most popular girl in the class, feeling the weight of her reputation, the pressure of her image. I was living her life, sitting in her seat, wearing her clothes, and everyone in this room believed I was her. The disconnect was jarring. It felt like I was two people at once, the actor on the stage, and the terrified stagehand hiding in the wings, watching the whole absurd play unfold. I finished the exam with nearly an hour to spare. After checking my answers twice, I gathered my things. Standing up again in the heels felt just as precarious as the first time. I made my way to the front of the hall, my heels making a series of sharp, decisive clicks on the tiled floor. The sound seemed to fill the quiet room. I could feel every eye in the lecture hall lift from their papers to watch my progress. I placed the completed exam on the professor's desk. "Thank you, Professor," I murmured, my voice coming out soft and feminine. "Already done?" "Katie, impressive," he said, looking surprised but pleased. I gave a weak smile and turned to leave. The walk back down the aisle felt a mile long. I was acutely aware of the short skirt, the sheer pantyhose, the impossibly long legs. I was on display, a specimen under a microscope. The shame was still there, but now it was mingled with a strange sense of power. I had done it. I had walked in here as her, taken the test, and fooled everyone. As I walked out of the hall and back into the sunlight, a strange thought occurred to me. For the past 2 hours, I hadn't been Jacob. I had been Katie, and in some bizarre, terrifying way, I had succeeded at it. The realization didn't bring me comfort. It just made me feel even more lost. The walk back to Prescott Hall was a blur. My mind was so preoccupied with replaying the events of the exam that I barely noticed the stairs or the treacherous pavement. All I could think about was getting back to the room, getting back into my own body, and putting this entire insane episode behind me. The relief I felt when I finally pushed open the door to room 304 was immense. Katie was sprawled on the floor, surrounded by my chemistry textbook and a mountain of crumpled notes, my old laptop open in front of her. He looked up as I entered, a frustrated expression on my face. "Thank God you're back," my own voice said, laced with her inflection. "I tried to study some of this stuff, and it's complete gibberish. How did it go?" "I finished," I said, my voice breathless as I leaned against the door to kick off the agonizingly painful heels. The relief of freeing my feet was instantaneous and profound. I think I got an A. Her face, my face, broke into a massive grin. "You are my absolute hero, Jacob," she exclaimed, jumping to her feet with a fluid masculine grace that I still wasn't used to. She rushed over and threw my arms around me in a crushing hug. The embrace was the strangest experience yet. I was being held by my own body, feeling my own muscular arms wrapped around this new, smaller frame. I could smell my own deodorant, feel the familiar texture of my hoodie. It was like being hugged by a ghost of myself. Okay, I said, gently pushing away. "You're welcome now, please. Can we switch back? I can't stand being in this body for another second." "Deal's a deal," she said cheerfully. She picked up her phone from the desk. The strange app with the swirling vortex was still open. "Okay, stand in the middle of the room again. Same as before." I moved to the spot, my heart beginning to pound with anticipation. Freedom was just a screen tap away. I was going to get my life back. She held up the phone. The two circles still showed our live images, me and her body, her in mine. The glowing line connecting us pulsed gently. "Ready to go home?" she asked with a wink. "More than ready," I said, my voice filled with a desperate sincerity. She pressed the reverse button. We waited and waited. Nothing happened. No heat, no tingling, no shimmering light. I was still Katie. She was still Jacob. "Huh, that's weird," she said, tapping the button again. And again, still nothing. A small frown creased my old forehead. Maybe the connection timed out. Let's try resetting it. She closed the app and reopened it. This time, when it loaded, a small red notification box was blinking in the corner of the screen. She tapped it. A block of text appeared. She read it aloud, her voice losing its cheerful edge. "System overload. Biometric signatures have been successfully mapped and transferred. Reverse flux capacitor offline for recalibration. Temporary lockout protocol initiated. Reversal function unavailable at this time. Please try again in 404 system error." The room went dead silent. The only sound was the frantic thumping of my own heart, which felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. 404 system error, I repeated, my voice a horrified whisper. What does that mean? What does unavailable at this time mean? I don't know, Katie stammered, her eyes wide with a dawning panic. She started frantically tapping at the screen, exiting and reopening the app, shaking the phone as if that would somehow fix it. It's never done this before. It's always worked. It's not working. My legs gave out from under me, and I sank onto the fluffy pink rug, my short skirt pooling around me. "No," I whispered. No, this couldn't be happening. It was supposed to be a few hours, a temporary, insane favor. Not this. Katie, in my body, started pacing the room, her movements jerky with anxiety. "This is bad. This is really, really bad." She ran her hands through my hair, a gesture of pure panic. Suddenly, her composure broke. She slumped onto the bed, buried my face in my hands, and let out a choked sob. It was the most surreal thing I had ever seen my own body, crying with the voice and mannerisms of a terrified girl. The sight of it snapped me out of my own shock. An angry, bitter energy surged through me. "Bad? You think this is asterisk, bad asterisk?" I scrambled to my feet, my voice rising to a shrill pitch. "This is your fault. You and your crazy, impossible app. You begged me. You promised me. You said it would be temporary." Her head snapped up, tears streaming down my cheeks. "I thought it would be. I didn't know this would happen," she cried, her voice thick with despair. "I'm scared, Jacob." "You're scared," I gestured wildly at my own body. At the skirt, the blouse, the smooth pantyhose-clad legs. Look at me, I'm trapped, I'm stuck as you. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to live like this? The fight went out of her, replaced by a wave of exhausted misery. I don't know, she whispered, her voice cracking. I guess we have to live like this, at least for a while, until we can figure out how to fix it. The words hung in the air, heavy and final, stuck, living like this. The implications were staggering. I wasn't just wearing a costume anymore, this was my reality now. I looked down at my hands, her hands, slender, delicate, utterly alien. I was Jacob, but I was wearing Katie's body like a prison. Katie sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of my hand. She looked at me, her expression a mixture of guilt and desperation. We have to keep up the act, she said, her voice shaky but firm. No one can know. You have to keep being me, and I have to be you. The thought was horrifying. It meant more skirts, more makeup, more heels, more pretending. It meant my old life, my identity as Jacob, was effectively over. You have to change out of those clothes, she said quietly, gesturing to the rumpled exam outfit. You can't sleep in a skirt and pantyhose. There are pajamas in the top drawer. Her practical statement was a cold slap of reality. This wasn't a nightmare I was going to wake up from. This was my life now, numbly. I walked to her dresser and pulled open the top drawer. It was filled with soft, folded nightgowns and pajama sets. I was going to be Katie for a lot longer than just one exam. The first few days were a special kind of hell. Every morning, I'd wake up in a haze, my mind still half believing I was in my own bed. Then I'd feel the long, heavy weight of blonde hair splayed across the pillow, see the soft, feminine curve of a hip under the thin comforter, and the crushing reality would come crashing back. I was Katie, and I was stuck. We fell into a strange, tense routine. Katie, who insisted I start calling her Jack to avoid confusion between us, would leave early each morning for my old classes, dressed in my jeans and hoodies. She seemed to be adapting with a surprising ease, reveling in the anonymity and physical freedom of being a guy. It's amazing, he told me one evening. No one stares. I can just walk around and be invisible. And I don't have to spend an hour doing my hair and makeup. It's the most liberating thing ever. My experience was the exact opposite. My life became a crash course in femininity, taught by a very stressed out and guilty instructor. The first lesson was makeup. Jack sat me down in front of Katie's vanity mirror, which was littered with an intimidating arsenal of brushes, pencils, and compacts. Okay, he said, picking up a wicked-looking metal device. This is an eyelash curler. You have to be careful with it or you'll pinch your eyelid. I spent 20 minutes fumbling with the terrifying contraption, my hand shaking, convinced I was going to blind myself. Then came the eyeliner. Trying to draw a straight line on my own eyelid with an unsteady hand was an exercise in pure frustration. My first attempt left me looking like a raccoon. My second was a smudged, wobbly mess. You're holding it too stiffly, Jack criticized, leaning over my shoulder. It's like drawing. You need a light touch. He took my hand, his larger, masculine fingers wrapping around my slender ones to guide the pencil. The gesture was meant to be helpful, but the strange intimacy of it, his body so close to mine. His male form teaching my female one how to be more female sent a confusing shiver down my spine. Eventually, I got the hang of a basic routine, a little foundation to even out my skin tone, a touch of mascara to make my eyes look bigger, and a slick of pink lip gloss. Every time I finished, the girl in the mirror looked a little less like a terrified hostage and a little more like the real Katie. The transformation was unsettling. I was literally painting on a new identity, and with each brushstroke, Jacob seemed to fade a little further into the background. The wardrobe was another daily challenge. Jack made it clear I had to maintain Katie's reputation as a stylish, well-dressed girl. That meant no more hiding in baggy clothes. Her closet was a minefield of choices I didn't understand: high-waisted jeans, cropped sweaters, sundresses, and an entire section of skirts. One afternoon, desperate for some comfort, I tried to put on a pair of her sweatpants and a t-shirt. Jack walked in and immediately shook his head. Nope, Katie wouldn't be caught dead in that outside this room. She has a reputation to uphold. He pulled a hanger from the closet. On it was a light blue, form-fitting top with thin spaghetti straps that left the shoulders and collarbone completely bare. It was a type of shirt I'd later learn was called a camisole. I can't wear that, I protested. There's nothing to it. "That's the point," he said, tossing it to me. "It's warm out. Everyone's wearing tops like that. Just put it on." Reluctantly, I changed. The fabric was soft and stretchy, clinging to my torso like a second skin. But the feeling of being so exposed was deeply unnerving. The straps felt impossibly fragile, and the cool air in the dorm room caressed my bare shoulders and the top of my chest. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a stranger with delicate, exposed shoulders and a graceful neck. It was an undeniably pretty look, but it felt like I was wearing a sign that said, "Look at me." Going outside in that top was a trial by fire. I felt completely naked. Every breeze was a shock. Every glance from a passer-by felt like an indictment. But then, something unexpected happened. A guy from one of Katie's classes saw me on the way to the library. "Wow, Katie," he said, his eyes lighting up. "You look amazing today. That color really suits you." My automatic instinct was to blush and look away. But I forced myself to remember Jack's coaching asterisk smile. "Say thank you. Be charming." "Oh, thank you so much, Matt," I said, the name coming to me from some memory bank I'd apparently inherited. My voice sounded sweet and confident. His smile widened. "Hey, let me get the door for you." He hurried ahead and held the heavy library door open, waiting for me to pass. As I walked by, I murmured another thanks, and he just beamed. Inside the library, I leaned against a bookshelf, my heart beating fast. The shame and fear were still there, but they were now mixed with that same confusing flicker of pleasure I'd felt during the exam. Being treated this way with admiration, with chivalry, was nice. No one had ever held a door open for Jacob, the nerdy chemistry student. But for Katie, the pretty girl in the blue top, it was expected. I was beginning to understand the subtle power that came with this new form. Slowly, tentatively, I started to experiment. I tried different skirts from her closet, discovering I preferred the way the A-line ones twirled when I walked. I found a pair of black pantyhose that had a delicate floral pattern running up the side and wore them with a simple black dress. Feeling a thrill at the secret elegance of the outfit, I learned to walk in lower, blockier heels that were more stable but still gave me that feminine posture and gait. Jack and I started talking more, not as adversaries but as co-conspirators. He'd tell me about his day in my old life, how he was enjoying the simplicity of it, how he'd joined an intramural soccer team because he'd never been athletic enough as a girl. And I'd tell him about my bizarre adventures as Katie, the awkward conversations with her friends, the guys who tried to flirt with me, the surprising joy of discovering a new shade of nail polish. One evening, as I was carefully painting my nails a deep shade of crimson, Jack watched me from the bed. "You know," he said quietly, "you're getting really good at all this. Sometimes I forget you're not really her." I looked at my hand, at the slender fingers and the perfectly painted nails. A month ago, this hand had been mine, calloused and clumsy. Now, it was an artist's hand, a girl's hand. And he was right. I was getting good at it, too good. The line between Jacob and Katie was starting to blur, and I wasn't sure if that was a terrifying thought or a strangely comforting one. It happened on a Friday night, about a month and a half after the swap. Jack had gone out with some of my old friends, his new friends, to catch a movie. I had the dorm room to myself, a rare luxury. Katie's friends had invited me out to a party, but I'd begged off, claiming I had a headache. The truth was, I was still exhausted by the constant performance. Being on as Katie all the time was draining. I decided to take a long hot shower. The sensation of the water sluicing over my unfamiliar body had become a strange comfort. I used Katie's expensive, floral-scented shampoo, working it into a rich lather in the long blonde hair that now felt completely my own. I shaved my legs, the razor gliding effortlessly over the smooth skin, a ritual that had gone from being a bizarre chore to a mindless, almost meditative routine. After my shower, I stood wrapped in a fluffy pink towel in front of the full-length mirror. Steam clouded the edges of the glass, but the reflection in the center was crystal clear. It was her. It was me. The face was soft from the steam, the blue eyes clear, the body was slender, curved, and completely, undeniably female. There was no trace of Jacob left. The thought didn't spark the usual panic. Instead, I just felt a quiet sense of fact. This is what I was now. Instead of putting on my usual pajamas, I felt a strange impulse. I opened her closet and looked through the section reserved for dresses. My eyes landed on one I'd never dared to touch before. It was a simple, elegant black dress. It was sleeveless, with a modest neckline, but it was cut to hug the body's curves before flaring out slightly at the knee. It looked sophisticated, mature. On a whim, I pulled it on. The fabric was a soft, heavy knit that felt wonderful against my clean skin. It zipped up the back with a satisfying pull. I turned to the mirror. The dress fit perfectly. It accentuated my narrow waist, the curve of my hips, the new softness of my shoulders. It made me look beautiful. Not just pretty in a cute, college girl way, but genuinely, gracefully beautiful. I wasn't done. I sat at the vanity and did my makeup with a slow, deliberate confidence I hadn't possessed a month ago. I chose a smoky eyeshadow that made my blue eyes look deeper, and a bold, red lipstick that made my lips look full and striking. I even managed a fairly successful cat eye with the liquid eyeliner. Then, I went for the final touch. I pulled out the sheer black pantyhose I'd worn for the exam, the ones that had terrified me so much. Now, they felt familiar, almost comforting. I sat on the bed and slid them on, the slick nylon caressing my legs. Lastly, I slipped on the tall black pumps. I stood up, and this time, I didn't wobble. I was perfectly balanced. I walked back to the mirror and stared. The person looking back was a complete stranger. And yet, I knew her more intimately than I had ever known myself. It was Katie. Yes, but it was a version of Katie that I had created. I had chosen the dress, applied the makeup, put together the entire look. This woman in the mirror was my own work of art. And she was happy. I could see it in her eyes. There was a confidence there, a poise that Jacob had never possessed. Jacob had been shy, awkward, and perpetually invisible. He was smart, sure, but he drifted through life in the background, too afraid to be noticed. This person in the mirror, this new version of me, was anything but invisible. She was vibrant, she was stunning, and she was smiling a genuine, unforced smile. In that moment, standing alone in that quiet dorm room, the last wall of my resistance crumbled. The denial, the anger, the fear, it all just melted away. I wasn't Jacob trapped in Katie's body anymore. The distinction had become meaningless. The person I was before the swap felt like a character from a book I'd read a long time ago. The person in the mirror was real. She was me. I thought about my old life, the lonely nights in my drab dorm room, the anxiety in social situations, the constant feeling of being second best, and I compared it to this new life. The camaraderie with Katie's friends who were now my friends, the small kindnesses from strangers, the simple, heady pleasure of looking in the mirror and liking what I saw. The truth, when it finally hit me, was as simple as it was shocking. I was happier now. When Jack came back a few hours later, he found me sitting on the window seat, still in the dress and heels, just looking out at the campus lights. He stopped in the doorway, my eyes widening. "Wow," my old voice said softly. "You look incredible." I turned and gave him a small, real smile. "I feel incredible." He walked in and sat in the desk chair, studying my face. He could tell something was different. "You okay?" I took a deep breath. It was time to say it out loud. "Jack, I've been thinking about the app, about trying to fix it." His expression tensed. "Yeah, any ideas?" "My idea," I said, my voice steady, "is that we should stop looking." He stared at me, confused. "Stop? But don't you want to be yourself again?" I shook my head, a lock of blonde hair falling across my face. I tucked it behind my ear. At first, I thought this was a prison, a nightmare, but it's not. You know, I've never felt so comfortable in my own skin, which is crazy, because it's not my skin, or maybe it is now. I looked at him, my new heart full of a strange, peaceful certainty. I think I was meant to be this person. I don't want to go back. I've never been happier than I am right now. A slow, understanding smile spread across my face. He nodded, a look of profound relief in his eyes. "You know," he said, his voice quiet and earnest, "I feel the same way. I never knew how much pressure I was under, trying to be perfect, Katie, all the time. Being Jacob, it's like I can finally breathe." We sat there in silence for a long moment, two people in the wrong bodies who had somehow found their right lives. He reached out and tentatively took my hand, his familiar, calloused fingers wrapped around my new, slender ones. It wasn't an act of romance, but of solidarity, an acknowledgement of our shared, impossible journey. "So," he said, a new lightness in his voice, "Katie, it is." Then, "Yeah," I replied, my voice soft. "Katie, it is." Accepting my new identity was one thing. Truly living it was another. The conversation with Jack was a turning point. It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about embracing the life I had stumbled into. The name Jacob became a distant memory, a name tag from a former life. I was Katie now, not just in body, but in mind and spirit. My confidence blossomed. I stopped just mimicking the old Katie and started to become my own version of her. I blended my sharp, analytical mind with her natural social grace. In our literature class, I began to speak up, offering insights that were so well articulated that even the professor was impressed. Katie's friends, who had initially been just people I had to fool, became my genuine friends. I learned their histories, their jokes, their heartaches. I went with them to get coffee, to shop for clothes, to study in the library. I was building a life, my life. The way I dressed changed too. It was no longer a costume I was forced into. It was a form of self-expression. I found I had a taste for elegant, classic styles. I loved the feel of a well-cut blazer over a silk camisole, the swish of a pleated midi skirt, and the way a good pair of sheer pantyhose could make any outfit feel more polished and complete. Getting dressed in the morning became a favorite ritual, a creative act of deciding which version of Katie I wanted to present to the world that day. The attention from guys also became less terrifying and more manageable. I learned how to flirt back, to deflect unwanted advances with a charming smile, and to accept a compliment without blushing and stammering. There was one guy in particular, a kind and funny art history major named Ben, who started talking to me after class. He wasn't like the others who just complimented my appearance. He was interested in my thoughts, my opinions. He made me laugh, for the first time. I could imagine the possibility of romance in this new life, a prospect that was both thrilling and profoundly strange. Meanwhile, Jack thrived as Jacob. He cut my old hair shorter, started working out at the campus gym, and fully embraced the laid-back, low-pressure life of an average college guy. He was still smart, but he no longer felt the need to be the best at everything. He was just happy. We remained roommates in spirit, the keepers of each other's greatest secret, and became the unlikeliest of best friends. We were the only two people on Earth who understood the truth of what we'd been through and what we had become. One sunny afternoon in late spring, I was sitting on a bench in the campus quad, reading a novel for class. I was wearing a simple white sundress and a pair of cute sandals. My blonde hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and a light breeze felt pleasant on my bare arms. I was so engrossed in my book that I didn't notice Ben approaching until he was standing right in front of me. "Hey, Katie," he said, a warm smile on his face. "Ben, hi," I replied, my heart giving a little flutter. "You scared me." "Sorry about that." He laughed. "I just saw you sitting here and, well, I was wondering if you might want to get some ice cream later. My treat." The old Jacob would have panicked, made an excuse, and run away. But I wasn't the old Jacob. I was Katie, and Katie wasn't afraid. I smiled up at him, a genuine, confident smile that came from a place of true contentment. I'd love that. As he walked away, promising to text me later, I leaned back on the bench and closed my eyes, letting the warm sun wash over my face. I thought about the terrified, awkward boy who had walked into a dorm room months ago, his life about to be turned upside down. I thought about the panic of the transformation, the humiliation of the first time in a skirt and heels, the terror of being trapped. None of that mattered anymore. That boy was gone. In his place was a young woman who was happy, confident, and excited about her future. The exam had gone wrong, disastrously so. The app had failed, but in that catastrophic failure, I had found an unexpected, miraculous success. I had lost a life I was merely enduring, and in its place, I had found one I truly loved. I had been asked to become a perfect copy of her, just for a day. I never could have imagined that in doing so, I would finally become a perfect version of myself.